Hello, annyeonghaseyo everyone. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to make bitter melon vine stir fry with pork. And in Malay, we call this mangkli aki jung kambo. And this is a seasonal dish. If you guys plant bitter melons, or if you know someone that plants bitter melons, the outer vines that comes out, we pick out the leaves and then we use it for stir fries. And it is quite delicious if you are acquired to eating bitter melons. And it is kind of slightly bitter, but it is pretty delicious with any kind of protein that you end up stir frying it in. So I'll be showing you guys how to make it today. If you guys have access to anyone that knows or plant bitter melons and saves the vines, then this dish is really simple to make. And let me know if you ever tried this dish before, or if your grandparents or your mom ever made this dish for you, and if you like it. So let's go ahead and I'll show you guys how to make mangkli aki jung kambo. It's gonna be good, so let's go. Alright, so let's talk about the bitter melon vines, or also known as the shoots, whatever you guys like to call it. But they look like this, and my relatives brought us a few bundles of this, but I want to show you guys how we like to trim it and take care of it before we stir fry it. But they look like this, nice and pretty. Quite a big bundle, but majority of this is going to be discarded because the stems here is a little bit too rough to eat. So I'll show you guys how to trim this before we stir fry it. If you guys are lucky, you could probably find this at your local supermarket, or maybe your local farmer's market. Sometimes they do sell it. You probably just have to ask, because sometimes you can't really tell if it is bitter melon vines or not. But if you guys also have a relative or any farmers that you know that sells or plants bitter melons, you can ask them for the vines. But yes, it is a seasonal product, so you guys probably can't really find this year round. So at this time of year, you'll probably find this, and it is great for stir fry. So I'll show you guys how to trim this before we actually go and stir fry it. Pretty nice. Okay, so my mom's going to show you guys how she likes to do it. So you go through and pick out the leaves, and then you'll just take it out from the stems. And then sometimes you can feel some of these stems are a little bit hard, so you can just discard it. So she says that stems that are really rough, that aren't edible, just take it, discard it away. Just pick out the softer vines, softer stems here, and then put it in a bowl, and that's it. So I'm going to be using about 2 pounds total untrimmed, just because they typically would sell it untrimmed. It'll be like a big bundle, and you'll have to take it home and trim it out yourself. So the more turly part here, go ahead and discard it too, just because they're not really pleasant to eat in terms of texture. So just trim this off too. We don't need to eat this. Alright, so I finished trimming these, and the leaves are all nice and trimmed. Sometimes you have a stem there, and the stem is fine as long as it's not rough to eat. But other than that, you can see how my mom and I trimmed it. We clean it all out, and you got this left over. This you can discard. So we throw that away, and basically you end up with a pretty big bowl of just the bitter gourd or melon leaves here. And we're going to treat these just like how you would treat spinach. We have a lot in this bowl, but once you stir fry it, it's going to wilt down and you're not going to have much left over. So the same thing as any basic greens that you stir fry. So I'm going to go ahead and wash this a few times to make sure there's no dirt, and drain it really well, and then we can go ahead and I'll show you guys how to stir fry it. Alright, so everything's prepped. Let's go ahead and start frying. I have a pan here with some oil. You guys can use whatever oil you guys like. And we are going to be cooking this with some pork. So I have some pork here, about 1 pound of pork. I am using pork butt today. You guys can use whatever part of the pork you guys like. So I chopped it into bite-sized pieces here, and we're going to add that into the give that a stir. So with the meat, you guys can definitely cook this with whatever meat you guys like. You can do chicken, beef, or you could just do it as it is. You can just saute it as it is without any protein. But typically I like to eat this with pork. I grew up eating this with pork, and my grandma in Thailand would make this with some pork as well, and it just goes really well with it. So you guys can choose your own protein. Right. So anytime you're cooking protein or sauteing protein, make sure you add a little bit of seasoning to it to season the meat first. I'll have some salt in there. So with the protein, you guys can cook it however doneness you like. You can either do this super crispy or you can do it just till it's cooked. I like it till it gets to really nice golden brown color and a little bit crispy, and the oil has rendered out pretty good. So again, it's really up to you and how you like to cook your meat to the doneness that you like. Okay, so I'm just gonna cook this out, release some of that oil and brown it a little bit, and then we'll finish putting the rest of the ingredients in. Okay, so the pork is browning nicely. At this point, you can go even more crispier and cook it even more browner to get it nice and crispy. At this point, if you guys are using any fatty pork, part of the pork, go ahead and drain up any of the excess oil that has been released. But I'm not going to drain the oil just because I'm using quite a lot of the bitter melon leaves. So if you guys want, you can have the option to drain out the excess fat here. So I'm going to add in about 3 cloves of chopped garlic here. Add that in there. And I have about 1 inch diameter of chopped ginger here that I chopped up. About like a tablespoon or so. And saute this up just to release the oils from there. And then once you sweat that, let's go ahead and immediately add in the leaves here. Stir this up really well. Okay, so it's almost fully wilted. At this point, let's go ahead and season it. So I'm not going to do much with the seasoning. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to it. And I have some mushroom seasoning as well. And then I have some pepper here. So the pepper, I took some whole peppers and just slither it a little bit. But I'm just putting it in there for some spice and for some color. If you guys want to, you could chop it even smaller so that when you eat it, you can have a bite of pepper for every bite. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the seasonings. If you guys want, you can definitely add oyster sauce in there. You can add soy sauce, you know, Golden Mountain Valley sauce. It's really up to you, really. But I'm keeping it pretty basic just because I want the actual leaf to stand out and so that you can actually taste it. Other than that, this is pretty much getting there. So once this stem is nice and fully cooked and soft, let's go ahead and turn off the heat and we're done. Go ahead and taste for seasonings, and then we can go ahead and serve this with some rice. It's pretty easy and also very delicious. Oh my gosh. It's like morning glory stir fry, you know what I'm talking about? Alright, so let's go ahead and plate this up. And there will be some liquid on the bottom, so if you guys want, you can definitely keep the liquid or you can throw it out. Some people like to eat the liquid with some rice, but it's up to you. So this is pretty much it. We can serve this with some rice on the side, and that's it. Ooh.